Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into some of the most shocking and haunting crimes in history. Today, we'll be exploring the terrifying story of the Green River Killer, one of the most prolific serial killers in the United States. Join us as we unravel the chilling details of this harrowing murder spree that gripped Seattle and left countless young women in fear for their lives. Our story begins on a cold and rainy day in Seattle. A young woman, exhausted from a long day's work, grows tired of waiting at her bus stop. Desperate to escape the unrelenting rain, she decides to flag down a ride home. Little did she know that this decision would lead her into the clutches of one of the most notorious killers in American history, the Green River Killer. As the murder spree raged on, the police became desperate for answers. In an unexpected turn, they sought the help of none other than Ted Bundy. Bundy, a convicted serial killer himself, provided valuable insights into the mind of someone capable of destroying human life. How does a person reach a point where they feel compelled to commit such heinous acts? The answers were as complex as they were unsettling. The young woman waiting in the rain soon found herself face to face with danger when a man offered her a ride. Unfortunately, this encounter was consistent with the area and times when young women often fell victim to the Green River Killer. Unbeknownst to her, they agreed on another transaction, one that would forever change her life. Astonishingly, she managed to survive the brutal attack and narrowly escaped with her life. However, many who followed her would not be as fortunate. The summer of 1982 saw the Pacific Avenue South Strip near Seattle-Tacoma International Airport teeming with teenage girls and young women seeking paying dates. It was a dangerous world, where lives were at stake, and tragedy seemed to lurk around every corner. Investigating these crimes proved exceptionally challenging. The victims, often part of the trades, were difficult to trace and frequently went unreported when they disappeared. Their movements were hard to track, making it even more perilous for those caught in this vicious cycle. The body count steadily rose, sending shockwaves through the community. The Green River Killer's victims were treated as disposable objects, their lives cruelly snuffed out for his twisted pleasure. The killer's methods varied, but his actions were driven by rage. The sheer number of victims shed light on the dark mindset that saw these women as mere playthings, easily disposed of. It is a horrifying reality that, for a time, seemed unstoppable. Nearly 2 decades would pass before this monster was finally identified. The first victim, Wendy Cofield, was discovered on July 15, 1982, when 2 teenage boys stumbled upon her lifeless body in the Green River. She was just 16 years old, taken from the world far too soon. Wendy's death initially appeared to be an isolated incident, but sadly, it was only the beginning of a relentless and blood-curdling rampage. The discovery of Deborah Bonner, just weeks after the first victim, sent shockwaves through the community. Within a month, the body count climbed to 5 with the tragic findings of Marcia Chapman, Cynthia Hines, and Opal Mills, all victims of this ruthless predator. The Green River dump site became a haunting symbol of the atrocities committed by the killer. The once beautiful area that had provided a heavenly ambience had been transformed into a hellish nightmare. The reason behind the killer's choice to dump the bodies in the Green River remains unknown, but it is clear that this location held some significance for him. It is chilling to think about the thought process behind such gruesome acts. As the investigation continued, authorities started piecing together the killer's behavior. He seemed to revisit his dump sites, potentially even driving by to check on the bodies he left behind. The Green River Killer's sinister return to the scenes of his crimes speaks to his twisted satisfaction and the lack of remorse for the lives he had stolen. The killer's brutality extended beyond the act of murder. Necrophilia, a horrifying phenomenon, seemed to be a part of his disturbing ritual. It is difficult to comprehend the depths of depravity that drove him to engage in such despicable acts with his lifeless victims. Despite the alarming discovery of these first victims, the Green River Killer showed no signs of slowing down. Giselle Loverne became his sixth victim in September 1982, bringing the body count to a shocking number. Her tragic story, filled with hope for a better future, serves as a poignant reminder of the lives cut short by this merciless predator. The killer's methods evolved as he sought to avoid detection. Moving away from the Green River, he adapted his strategy, continuing to hunt and kill in the Seattle area. His ability to remain elusive and maintain a sense of control over the investigation posed a challenge for law enforcement. With each passing month, the death toll climbed higher. By the end of 1982, approximately 15 murders had been attributed to the Green River Killer. However, only a fraction of the victims' remains had been recovered, leaving families desperate for answers and closure. One of the youngest victims, Colleen Brockman, at just 15 years old, disappeared on Christmas Eve of 1982. Colleen's story paints a heartbreaking picture of a troubled home life, prompting her to run away. This time, however, she would never return, becoming another victim of the Green River Killer's heinous crimes. As the new year approached, the haunting question loomed: what would be the killer's next move? Law enforcement faced the daunting task of predicting the unpredictable. The uncertainty surrounding his actions searched for answers, all the more challenging. As the months rolled by, fear gripped the hearts of the girls and women working the streets. Every passing day brought the looming shadow of the Green River Killer closer, their constant vigilance unable to alleviate the terror that haunted them. Law enforcement was trapped in a web of speculation, searching for any clue that could lead them to the assailant. The frustration and demoralization experienced by the detectives were palpable. Each new body or set of remains discovered served as a devastating blow, leaving them feeling powerless in the face of this horrifying spree. By April 1983, the Green River Killer had claimed the lives of approximately 20 victims, with no end in sight. Uncovering his true identity seemed an insurmountable challenge. The puzzling patterns of the killer's behavior confounded investigators. The motivation behind his actions remained shrouded in darkness. While countless theories emerged, explaining how a person could reach such a depraved state, the truth eluded those seeking answers. The complexity of the human mind and the twisted desires that drive such acts of violence defied easy explanations. The night of April 30th, 1983 marked another tragic chapter in the Green River Killer's reign of terror. 18-year-old Marie Malvar, working as a prostitute, climbed into a truck, unknowingly sealing her fate. Her boyfriend, often acting as a protective presence, lost sight of the vehicle at a traffic signal, and Marie vanished forever. The search for her would prove fruitless. In an unusual turn of events, the police sought assistance from none other than Ted Bundy, the notorious serial killer. Bundy's previous experience with law enforcement during his own reign of terror offered a unique perspective. He suggested setting up surveillance networks, securing the crime scenes, and removing fresh bodies under cover of darkness to gain an advantage over the killer. However, despite the theoretical soundness of these strategies, the Green River Killer remained one step ahead. How was this monster able to convince his victims that he was harmless? How did he ensure they felt safe in engaging with him? These questions haunted both law enforcement and the public. The killer's youth and his ability to blend into the socio-economic fabric of the community may have contributed to his success in luring unsuspecting victims into his trap. The intricate cat-and-mouse game between the Green River Killer and the investigators intensified. The killer's audacity in revisiting the scenes of his crimes was a testament to his confidence and the control he believed he had over the situation. Law enforcement struggled to predict his next move or decipher the underlying patterns in his actions. The Green River Killer's ability to maintain anonymity and evade capture was a testament to his cunning. He exploited the vulnerabilities of his victims and exploited the challenges faced by law enforcement. The psychological warfare waged by this elusive predator left a trail of devastation and shattered lives in its wake. The Green River Killer's ability to put his victims at ease was an unsettling aspect of his modus operandi. Law enforcement and investigators surmised that his unassuming appearance, youth, and clean-cut demeanor played a significant role in gaining the trust of his victims. Ted Bundy, himself intrigued by the killer's work, suggested that he might blend in with their peers, making him the last person they would suspect. Bundy's theory proved eerily accurate, as the killer's unremarkable appearance allowed him to camouflage himself in the everyday fabric of society. It was a classic case of a wolf in sheep's clothing. The Green River Killer exploited his familiarity with the areas he targeted, using the vast wilderness as his advantage, and seemingly enjoying the twisted satisfaction of staying one step ahead of law enforcement. As the investigation continued, the killer refined his methods to suit his preferences. He demonstrated a keen attention to detail in selecting the best places to dispose of his victims' bodies. However, his memory seemed to be conveniently selective, recalling insignificant details while forgetting the faces of those he had killed. This detachment from their humanity likely aided him in committing these heinous crimes. It became evident that the killer viewed his victims as insignificant. By dehumanizing them, he could distance himself from the gravity of his actions. Each victim was merely a pawn in his sadistic game, targeted solely because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. The killer's crimes were driven by opportunity, a cold and calculated pursuit of his own desires. The interviews conducted after the killer's eventual arrest shed light on his callous nature and his distorted perception of his victims. He demonstrated little concern for their lives, remembering insignificant details but failing to recall critical information. It was as if he saw them as objects, unworthy of his attention and devoid of significance. Detectives also uncovered another disturbing aspect of the killer's twisted ritual. In addition to taking their lives, he would rob his victims of their belongings. This act of theft further showcased his disregard for their humanity and his desire to leave minimal evidence behind. The Green River Killer was methodical and meticulous, always mindful of leaving as little trace as possible. Leaving his victims unclothed served a dual purpose for the killer. Not only did it minimize the risk of leaving behind fibers or evidence, but it also fulfilled a sadistic desire to strip his victims of their dignity and personal belongings. The profound lack of empathy and the joy derived from such acts added another layer of darkness to the already gruesome crimes. The Green River Killer's ability to evade capture for so long can be attributed to his calculated nature and his meticulous attention to detail. He was a predator who reveled in the control he exerted over his victims, finding satisfaction in staying steps ahead of law enforcement. The twisted satisfaction he derived from this deadly game only served to prolong the agony for those desperately seeking justice. The Green River Killer's sinister motives extended beyond the act of murder itself. His deep-seated hatred for the women he targeted led him to strip them of their clothes and jewelry. This act served as a final act of degradation, an attempt to exert control even in death. The stolen jewelry held no personal value to him, it was merely a symbolic conquest. The killer's peculiar behavior regarding the jewelry demonstrated his twisted satisfaction in creating secrets only he knew. He would bring the stolen items to work, discreetly discarding them in the women's restroom, relishing the notion that he held secret power over his unsuspecting coworkers. The fact that others had his victims' belongings held no significance to him, it was the control he relished. It became apparent that the Green River Killer's hatred towards his victims knew no bounds. Killing them alone was not enough to satiate his dark desires. His satisfaction lay in tormenting and degrading them, treating them as objects rather than human beings. The depths of his twisted psyche seemed bottomless. As the years passed, the frequency of the killings diminished. Nearly 2 decades after the rampage began, in 2001, law enforcement finally caught up with the Green River Killer. The shocking revelation was that the ruthless murderer, the one who had evaded capture for so long, was Gary Ridgway, a 52-year-old truck painter at a commercial manufacturing plant. However, this was only the beginning. The authorities had come close to apprehending this deadly predator on multiple occasions, only to have him slip through their fingers time and again. In retrospect, warning signs of his descent into evil were evident long before the murders escalated. 2 significant factors seem to have contributed to Gary's transformation. Gary's upbringing included a domineering mother and a father who harbored a strong disdain for prostitutes. His mother's inappropriate behavior towards him during his adolescence, coupled with his father's animosity towards street workers, laid the foundation for his distorted view of women. As he grew older, he developed a deep-seated hatred toward prostitutes that fueled his violent tendencies. Gary's path toward evil became increasingly evident. From an early age, he displayed a lack of empathy, demonstrated by his violent acts against animals, including the family cat. As a teenager, he stabbed a young boy in the woods, showcasing his escalating sadistic tendencies. Despite his troubled past, he found solace in the world of adult entertainment workers, a realm that further fueled his disturbing desires. The signs of psychopathy were apparent. Gary's promiscuity and boredom with long-term partners aligned with the typical traits of a psychopath. His low IQ and poor academic performance added another layer to the complex puzzle of his psyche. These factors, combined with his deep-seated resentment and hatred, led him down a dark path of violence and destruction. Through all the years of killing, Gary Ridgway remained elusive. His insatiable desires drove him to continue his reign of terror, leaving behind a trail of fear and despair. The pieces of the puzzle slowly fell into place, leading law enforcement closer to the heart of darkness within the Green River Killer. Gary Ridgway's ordinary and seemingly balanced life, complete with a job, 3 marriages, and a child, defied the typical image of a serial killer. This ability to blend in and maintain a facade played a significant role in his ability to go unnoticed. Psychopaths, like Ridgway, have a unique way of experiencing emotions. They can mimic feelings, enabling them to manipulate those around them. Gary took advantage of this trait to deceive those in his life effectively. While Gary fooled everyone around him, his personal life was far from stable. Holding down a job or maintaining meaningful relationships proved challenging for him. However, he skillfully concealed these aspects of his life, allowing him to evade suspicion. Despite his troubled persona, he projected an image of normalcy, which further aided him in his criminal activities. Surprisingly, encounters with law enforcement did occur during Ridgway's killing spree, but he managed to slip through their grasp time and again. These encounters should have raised red flags, but without concrete evidence, he continued to evade arrest. Each missed opportunity resulted in the loss of more innocent lives. One notable encounter took place after Marie Malvar's disappearance. Her boyfriend, determined to find her, located a truck similar to the one she had entered that fateful night. As the police investigated, they found themselves at Gary's doorstep. However, they did not uncover any incriminating evidence during their search. It would take another 20 years before Marie's remains were finally discovered, shedding light on her tragic fate. In 1984, Gary Ridgway became a prime suspect in the eyes of law enforcement. His frequent transactions with prostitutes drew suspicion, yet there was no direct evidence linking him to the murders at that time. To gather information, he agreed to take a polygraph test. Astonishingly, he passed without any indication of deception. How could this be? Polygraph tests, known for their unreliability, may have been no match for Gary's cunning. He had already evaded capture for so long, leading him to believe he was smarter than the system. Perhaps he had learned how to manipulate the test, providing false results and further eluding suspicion. It seemed that his ability to deceive extended beyond interpersonal interactions. In 1987, Gary willingly provided a saliva sample during one of his encounters with law enforcement. However, at that time, forensic testing was not advanced enough to match the sample with other biological materials from the same individual. This missed opportunity further allowed him to escape detection, leaving behind a trail of unsolved crimes. Remarkably, amidst the darkness, there were stories of survival. Some women managed to escape the clutches of the Green River Killer. Their encounters with him provided critical details and descriptions that could have led to his identification. However, without a comprehensive database or the technology we have today, these valuable pieces of the puzzle remained disconnected. It is a frustrating reality that Gary Ridgway managed to evade capture for so long despite encounters with law enforcement and close calls. The lack of advanced forensic techniques, a comprehensive database, and the inability to connect the dots ultimately worked in his favor. His cunning manipulation of others, coupled with a relentless desire to satisfy his dark urges, created a deadly combination that allowed him to remain undetected. As we delve deeper into the narrative, it becomes evident that Gary Ridgway's atrocities extended beyond his known victims. There were instances where he encountered women who narrowly escaped his clutches. However, their fear and the complexities of their circumstances prevented immediate action. One survivor, a black woman, who was too heavy-set for him to overpower, chose not to report the incident, likely due to the inherent dangers in her line of work. Another survivor, Rebecca Gardy, found the courage to go to the police, but waited over 2 years to do so. Rebecca's account, shared in December of 1984, described an attack that occurred in November of 1982. Gary, however, mistakenly placed the assault before his first known murder in July of that year. As details blurred together in his mind, it became apparent that Rebecca's testimony could have helped identify Gary as a suspect. Unfortunately, his manipulative tactics and shifting blame aimed at Rebecca cast doubt on her credibility. The detective overseeing the case decided to close it, failing to connect the dots to the larger pattern of Gary's crimes. Despite evading capture once again, Gary's reign of terror would not last forever. In a pivotal turn of events, advancements in forensic techniques played a crucial role in his eventual apprehension. A saliva sample collected from him in 1987 provided the breakthrough investigators needed. With the emergence of short tandem repeat (STR) high technology, the sample was tested years later, yielding a genetic profile that linked Gary to 4 victims. The number of connected victims continued to grow, painting a chilling picture of his depravity. In December of 2003, Gary Ridgway received his long-awaited sentence, 48 life terms without the possibility of parole. The gravity of his crimes demanded justice, and he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. However, in 2011, another life sentence was added to the already staggering count. Gary pleaded guilty to the 1982 killing of Rebecca Marrero, cementing his status as one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. The true extent of Gary Ridgway's reign of terror may never be fully known. Estimates project his victim count to be between 80 to 90 vulnerable teenage girls and women. Families continue to search for answers, and there are still sets of unidentified remains waiting to be identified. Gary's conviction has shed light on his gruesome acts, but the pain and loss inflicted upon the victims' families remain immeasurable. As we close this chapter, we acknowledge the relentless efforts of law enforcement and forensic experts who worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle of the Green River Killer's crimes. Their commitment to justice has brought closure to many, but there is still work to be done. Investigations into unidentified remains and potential links to Gary's crimes continue to this day, fueled by the determination to uncover the truth. The haunting tale of the Green River Killer serves as a chilling reminder of the depths of human depravity and the resilience of those committed to justice. It is a stark illustration of the relentless pursuit of truth in the face of unspeakable evil. As we reflect on this dark chapter in history, may we continue to honor the memories of the victims and support the tireless efforts of those dedicated to preventing such horrors from recurring. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of darkness. If you found this series compelling, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell to stay updated on our future investigations. Remember, together, we can shed light on the darkest of mysteries. Until next time, stay vigilant and never lose hope.